This is Data Goes Ballistic, Part 15. I may what? Maddox's hand leapt towards his comm badge, but he was of course too slow. Humans are so dense. Data flipped the comm badge into the corner, then slammed the wussy little scientist against the wall, pinning him easily and pushing him down to a kneeling position. Maddox struggled, but he did not know how to fight. Data didn't notice the ineffective punches, but proceeded to unseal his trousers and ram his cock into Maddox's protesting mouth. Hearing the gagging and choking was surprisingly a huge turn-on for Data, sending a brief rush of current through his body to his brain, making stars appear before his eyes. Data rammed it in even harder. Then he noticed an extremely pleasurable feeling that was also unfamiliar in his rapidly building cloud of emotion. It took him a few moments to realise that it was Maddox biting down as hard as he could, apparently trying to injure him. Blinking to clear his vision, Data could see small tears in the top bioplast layer of his member. Interesting. Maddox bit down even harder then, and Data felt dizzy as the intensity of the feeling caused him to cry out softly. It wasn't too long, however, before the repeated assaults on the human's fragile body were too much, and Data saw Maddox's eyes begin to roll back into his head, and his face turned bluish grey. As Maddox gurgled his last strangled breath, Data thrust hard into his mouth with an intense spite, experiencing an orgasm more satisfying than any he'd had yet. He consciously tried to extend the orgasm as much as possible, because this jerker had deserved death more than anyone, he rationalised. Unfortunately, he did not have as much control as in the past, and eventually he started to soften. But the relaxed, relieved feeling was well worth the price. He let go of Maddox's shoulders, dumping him on the floor. Just then, Data realised he did not know what to do with the body. After all, he had made no plans beforehand. Maddox was just such a little asshole that Data's impulse had to run away with him.
Intriguing. Now I truly know what it means to be carried away.
Getting his mind back on track, he cast about frantically for some means of hiding the body, soon concluding that there was no way. That much biomatter would be noticed in the recycling system, and he had no authorization to use a transporter or airlock on the starbase, much less a phaser set on disrupt. He could not find any potential explosives in the lab either. Then he hit upon an idea. It was not a very good idea, but it would have to do. Data picked up Maddox's communicator and induced a small error in the sending circuits. Then he reattached it. He proceeded to the food slot and ordered in Maddox's prissy voice, "Computer, table service for one. 1 porthouse steak, medium. 1 Altair water, 4 degrees. Altair water seemed to be just Maddox's bread. Data chuckled to himself. As he set up the meal on the table, he cut off a huge bite of steak and started to chew.
Hey, this is good. I might have to try this stuff again sometime.
Once he had partially chewed, he went over and shoved it in Maddox's mouth, wedging it in, so totally blocking his airway. He then propped Maddox in the chair and slumped him over the table, passing the fork and knife in the corpse's hands to leave fingerprints, then letting the utensils fall to the floor.
Humans could die from just about anything.
Data stood in the outer lab room and addressed his handiwork. He knew that the charade would never stand more than a cursory evaluation. If a thorough autopsy was performed, someone was bound to guess that the injuries were too traumatic for the apparent situation. Still, those people had not proved too smart just yet. And everyone thought well of good old Data, their useful machine, their willing slave. Without a care, Data swaggered out of the door and back to his quarters to ruminate on his next move. Data reclined on his bunk, not happy now as he had been. The business with Maddox had been a nice interlude, but he had allowed it to distract him from his original purpose. Still, what choices had Maddox given him? Not too many.
I have to stop thinking about Maddox.
Data asked for the time. Oh, 100 hours. He thought maybe he should go to 12 forward to give himself an alibi. But he realised he did not really care whether they caught him or not. Most of the senior officers would be in their quarters anyway. He might be conspicuous running around the ship. He lay back and tried to relax, even though he did not really know how. He could hear the warp engines were being tested. Their sound pulsed slowly, being carried through the deck. Data had been told by several people that the engine's boom was a reassuring sound, and he tried to concentrate on it, to soothe his injured feelings. His mind wandered to the subject of his recent dream, and he found the images were rather difficult to recall at first. Only the intense endings seemed to be accessible to him. This was intriguing. Usually he remembered dreams perfectly, all the time. Casting further into his mind, he tried to concentrate on the image fragments he could recall. Data, I love you. It was Tasha's voice.
Was that part of the dream, or a memory remnant? Or maybe I just made it up?
He smiled as he immersed himself in these loving memories, fantasies. Whether they were true or not was unimportant.
Fascinating.
The warp engine sounds were still present, and they were getting louder. At the same time, he could now hear Tasha's voice, producing involuntary gasps of pleasure, then crying out softly at first and then louder, "Oh, oh yes, oh yes, yes, ah, well."
Well?
Data opened his eyes with a start. He thought if he were able, he would have vomited. It was not a fantasy he was hearing, but a voice from the next cabin. Unbeknownst to him, the gain on his ears had turned itself up to full sensitivity. In a few moments of shock, he could not figure out how to turn it down, and a few minutes were all he needed to hear what he did not wish to. "Oh, Captain, I've been a naughty girl. Shouldn't you hoist me from the yardarm and whip me?" "Anything you wish, number one. After all, insubordination could not be tolerated around here." "Maybe I'll whip you first, Captain Baby. Come here and—" Jumping to his feet, Data finally managed to clasp his hands over his ears, but it was too late to prevent a raging storm of hatred from filling his body. He suppressed a momentary urge to rip out the wall between the cabins and make quick work of both of them. No, it would have to be more artistic, to do a little planning first. Not like the Maddox debacle. His hearing finally returned to normal on its own. He had known the time would come when he would have to take care of Riker and Troy anyway. Pulaski was small potatoes. Riker would find out about the Regulan T-Vine, and Deanna was a time bomb just waiting to explode all the secrets of his private feelings whenever she was near. But Data's positronic brain was able to come up with another brilliant plan. It would take him most of the night to prepare.